All right, so I'd like to greet everybody. Welcome to Leaders Connect, CEOConnect. We're in our 12th year of doing this, and we're very excited. We're in the midst of Michigan Leaders Read Michigan Authors, and Rich is the second of our series. In a few weeks, actually 2 weeks from today, we're going to speed things up. Vic Strecker is going to be here, and Vic has written a book called On Purpose. And this is a really unique book. It's a graphic novel. Vic, have you ever read graphic novels? Okay, a few of you, yes. So it's a really interesting format, and Vic is talking about finding your purpose in life, and he's talking about it from his own deep experience. Having gone through a tragedy in his family, and he's a professor at the university, so very exciting. And then in June, anybody here of Ari Weinzweig? Anybody know Ari? Everybody knows Ari. Ari is going to be presenting about his third book in his series on business, and this one is about leading yourself. So those of you that have any need to learn any more about leading yourselves, please come. And Ari, as you know, is a internationally renowned speaker and a great personality. And then in the fall, we've got a couple more books. I'm trying to remember. Jim Tobin is going to be presenting on The Man He Became, which is a really amazing biography of Franklin Delano Roosevelt during his transition from polio to run for president. And Jim has just been nominated for the book for the Chautauqua Prize for the best book of the year. So I've been to Chautauqua Institution. It's a fabulous place in New York State where they bring in authors. So Jim's going to be presenting. I want to be sure who else have we got coming in the fall. Larry Freed. I think Larry Freed is going to be presenting on his book on analytics. Larry Freed was the CEO. Kathy, and we got one more which I'm going to introduce. So I want to do a few introductions, and we're going to have our September speaker maybe introduce himself. Wayne Baker, come on up, Wayne. And Wayne and I have known each other for a good decade, and through the University of Michigan Business School. And Wayne has been one of the founders of the POS Center, Positive Organizational Scholarship. And great guy, and maybe you can talk about the book you're going to be discussing in September.
Great. Thank you, Rob. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm a professor at the Ross School of Business, as Rob says. We've worked together on and off for quite a long time now, and very kindly invited me to talk about my new book, which I'll talk about in the fall. The title is United America, and it's about the 10 values that, surprisingly, Americans have in common. That's what the book is about. However, in the talk, I'm also going to tell you about what's not in the book, which is the 11 values that divide us. So we are united, that's the good news, and we're divided on a lot of things. And then, most of you who are in business, you're probably wondering, what does this have to do with business? But my colleague, Kathy McDowell, and I, we just met again yesterday, are developing a program about how you actually apply these lessons and learnings in a business context. So I'll give a very brief example. One of the values that we share is called critical patriotism, which means that if I criticize the country or its policies or its government, I do so out of love of country, that I want the country to live up to its ideals. Put that in a business context. In your organization, are people able to criticize the company or its leaders or its policies without fearing for their safety or making a career-limiting move by doing so? Right? So what we're going to do is we'll talk about the 10 values we have in common, the 11 that we don't, and then how you apply it in a business context.
Wayne has done some amazing research on reciprocity and Arab community of Dearborn. Is that where you studied, Wayne? I think it's the Dearborn Arab community. So really amazing. And it's interesting, the link on values, because the book On Purpose that Vic will be talking about has a whole section. Vic may run us through an exercise about values and how you identify your values and live your values, align your, and I think the link with Rich today is it's very much about aligning your values with your work, and as a leader, creating an environment where people don't have to compromise their values, but can actually thrive in living the way they like to live and interact with people. So just as I babble on, CEO Leaders Connect is about the connection part, and I wanted to introduce a couple people who are doing interesting things in town so that you could get an idea about some of the great, exciting things. We've introduced some very interesting businesses in town. So Kathleen, where's Kathleen? Come on up, Kathleen. Kathleen, I met, again, about 10 years ago at United Bank. And Zayam is actually probably first, as she was working here. And she is the sister of Rachel. I called Rachel Little Sis because she's a little bit younger and a little smaller, I guess. But and this is Big Sis here. So Big Sis has launched a really exciting company aimed at helping parents with their kids. And maybe you can tell us about that.
Thank you, Rob. So we have two great products that we're excited about. The first one launched last year, Banker Junior. It's a kids financial
I'm going to slow you down.
Yeah.
Say it again so they can look it up.
Banker Junior. And it's a kids financial literacy app. We actually talked to Rich when we were first starting out and got his support and feedback, which was awesome. We license it to community banks and credit unions. So we're launching at banks all over. We're really excited about that one. We also have Member Junior for credit unions because they don't do anything bank. And then we also have a new one we're just in development on called Muncher Junior, which is a kids wellness app.
I gotta slow you down. Okay. What's it called? They're trying to write it down.
Okay, and then Muncher Junior is the second one. It's a kids wellness app.
Okay.
And we're really excited. We're partnering with folks all over town, Project Healthy Schools at University of Michigan and some other folks to really make this a great resource for kids who want to learn about wellness and track their meals and really get healthy in case their parents can't do it for them.
Great. So those are some of the exciting projects that are going on. Ferris, you had something you wanted to talk about. It's another exciting thing. Ferris is again a longtime friend from Detroit area, and you're collaborating with W. Washington. Okay.
So thanks to Steve. Steve is here somewhere. Here we go. Thanks to Steve. Yep. We actually, for the second year in a row, hosting with Washington Community College an event for a program called Global Trade Mission. And it's high school students coming together for 3 days, working in teams with people they don't know, to assemble a business plan and then pitch their idea to sell their product or services overseas. So it's an amazing opportunity. The school that came last year bring in triple the amount of students that they brought last year, and we have more schools participating. It would be awesome to see some of you volunteering with your advice for an hour, 90 minutes, whatever you could give to these students to help them understand how to structure a business. And then if you want to judge those presentations on Saturday, so May 8th, 9th, and 10th are the days for the event. And the website is globaltrademission.org. It would be great to see some of you there. Some of you participated last year. We thank you. And we thank you for those who sponsored some of the students as well. So thanks for having us on.
Thank you, Ferris. So lots of exciting things going on. I want to share with you one of my exciting things, which is that yesterday I joined the grandparent rep. And, Adam and Sarah had a baby in Thailand, where they live, and her name is Ada Imeline Bieber Pasick. So it's a mouthful, right? And Ada and Imeline are her two grandmothers. So I thought that was pretty sweet. They followed that along. So we're real excited, and we'll be going there in May to visit. So we can hardly wait. So there's lots of good things going on. We usually try to introduce some other people, but let's do this by categories. How many people are here from, I see Patricia, the media? How many media people are? Please stand up if you're from the media. Okay, so we got the Observer, and what's your, I want to say the name of your publication? The And. Yeah, the And comes out once a month. Once a month, is it?
Once a month.
Once a month, great. And the Observer is a great paper that makes you feel really guilty because you find out all the things that you could be doing every night and are not doing. This is the person who's responsible, who is Katie. Katie does the calendar. So it's a calendar. I've been reading that calendar for 35 years, I think. I go to about 1 out of 100 things. It's not too bad. Not too bad. Yeah. So it's really great, and it's been a real tremendous service to the community. How long has the Observer been?
Oh my gosh. We'll be celebrating our 40th anniversary
40th anniversary. That's amazing. Yeah, a lot of cool things. And so then we got university folks here. I see a couple. How many are from a university or school? Marvin, 2, 3, Wayne. Any other colleges represented here? That's it.
Michigan State.
Derek does teach at Michigan State. And Derek, I want to, on behalf of Tom Izzo, I want to thank you for not turning pro. This is really good, yeah. It's going to go one more year, trying to make the team, which is how many years in a row? Like 20 or something?
Yeah, 20-some years.
30-some years. He's big, but slow. Anyway, let's see what other, how about not-for-profits? We've got quite a few not-for-profits in the room, okay? Please stand up if you're, oh, you got 2 categories. So Kathleen, how many got other not-for-profits, okay? We'll say what yours is?
With the Ann Arbor Art Center.
All right, and there's many, your organization, United Way, okay, and Fisher's with UMS, right? Is your season wrapped up?
No, we got a new one.
A new season, all right. Come on up, Ken. Come on up. I was trying to get Ken into blue jeans today, but the guy's just stuck in his suit, man. So give us the 3 highlight, just 3. Gotta keep Ken, he can talk this brochure, but 3 of your favorites coming up next year.
Well, we have residencies with the San Francisco Symphony, the Mariinsky Orchestra, and then there's a play that you don't want to miss called Kiss and Cry, and it's fingers, like you'll see on the front of this brochure. I won't tell you anymore, just pick it up. Go to ums.org and you'll see a half-hour video of what's up this next year. But one last thing, go to umsrewind.org and you'll see a complete 136-year history of our organization. You just put in the search, you can find out a concert given in 1879 or 1916, thanks to help from the Bentley Library and our own Ann Arbor District Library, who digitized all of this stuff.
Fabulous, fabulous. And Ken was not here for the 1879, but he's been here for most of the rest of it. So. All right. Let's see, categories. How about entrepreneurs? A lot of entrepreneurs here. Please stand up, entrepreneurs. Wow, okay, so you see this heavily, yes. A lot of entrepreneurs in the room. Okay, so this is our future. These are the people that are creating the jobs. We have a lot of consultants. How about the consultants stand up? Were they entrepreneurs? All right. All right. Let's see, what category? We've got some folks that are in, well, I know Barrett is here, insurance business. Barrett, Doug, where's Doug? Doug's in the insurance business. Other people, Doug Cass, okay. And then we have, what other categories am I missing? Help me out. Venture capital? John? Yeah. Okay. What other ones?
Free food?
Well, I'm going to get to our sponsors in a minute. So we also have our sponsors, and one is Zingerman's. Is anybody here that works at Zingerman's? Okay. Not really. But United Bank is our other sponsor. And Pam is here. Jim Winslow's here. You guys stand up, and I don't know if I missed anybody, but they will provide all the great food, and they are a great sponsor and are going through a process of change, which is a challenge, and it's going to be, I guess, rolled out this summer. So, what's the name of the new bank? Old National Bank. Okay.
And Rob, you forgot lodging and hospitality. I can't believe you forgot that. I'm sorry? Lodging and hospitality.
Oh, lodging and hospitality. How could I forget that? Yes, yeah. Yeah, we have somebody here. So has everybody stood up if I missed anybody? Financial planning, we got some financial planners, right? Yeah, okay. So that's a really mixed group. And I want to announce that for this mixed group, I've been running basically executive roundtables, Marvin and Ken. Anybody else part of one of my executive roundtables? I know many people have been part of that over the years. And I'm going to launch a new one in the fall. So if anybody is interested in applying for membership to the executive roundtable, these consist of about 10 people that meet once a month with me to talk about the challenges they're facing both in their business and being a leader. So I will take applications. If you're interested, please let Rachel know. You can give her a card and put it on it. And I'll be doing some interviews over the summer and trying to select a really good group of folks that can help each other out in terms of running your businesses, running your life. So I think I've made all the major introductions I need to make, and now it's my pleasure to introduce the speaker. Rich Sheridan is one of the founders of Menlo, and you could say who the other partners are with you. And I met Rich probably around the turn of the century, I would think. And Rich and Kathy McDonald, Kathy, raise your hand in the back, were neighbors, and we were all working in the Carytown area. And Rich had this little storefront on 4th Avenue. I think we all rented from the same guy. And it was a storefront about the size of this, maybe this size, but I don't even know if it was this big. Okay. And he used to hold his meetings at the cafe next door. And you could go there and get a free cup of coffee and talk to Rich. And he was transitioning from a traditional job to becoming an entrepreneur with these people. Very exciting. Didn't know what exactly was going to happen. Landed on the front cover of, was it Fortune? Fortune magazine, because he's handsome. That's the only reason. The centerfold, his wife said no way. So that was and the daughters didn't like that idea either. But it was actually about people who are transitioning from business world into entrepreneurship. And since then, Menlo has been extremely successful as a software development firm, but also as a place which teaches about how to run a great, fun workplace. And in that time, Rich and Kathy and I started a program called Michigan Leaders Read. And we selected a couple of books. I think one was Good to Great. And we had everybody in the room read the books, and we were at the IT zone at the time. And we studied those books. So now I've resurrected this program, and we're doing Michigan Leaders Read Michigan authors. And it's my pleasure to now introduce the esteemed author of Joy, Inc., Richard Sheridan.
Thanks, Rob. I have to say that one of the things I've come to realize is that there's this thing after you write a book that I now refer to as author joy. And there are many moments of author joy that I've become familiar with. Some I'm still anticipating. Having people come up and ask you to sign the book is the easiest version of writing you'll do when you're an author, no question. Seeing how people highlight the book as author joy, looking out in a room like this and seeing all kinds of copies of the book everywhere is another version of author joy. And for me, my days are filled with travel right now. Anna Flynn, who I brought with me here, is master of my calendar, and she's gotten used to me looking her in the eye and saying, "So where am I supposed to be next, Anna?" And I just go where Anna tells me to go. I just got back from Portland yesterday, and I can tell you that there are many people living lives of quiet desperation in their work lives, and they want joy, and so the topic seems to be timely. But for me to come home and be with all of you, many of you are people I consider my best friends. And my daughters give me a hard time about this. They're like, "Seriously, Dad, your best friends? Come on. I mean, how many best friends can you possibly have, and how do you define best friend?" And I said, well, my definition is, if I was in trouble and I called one of you up at 3 in the morning, you'd come and get me, no questions asked. That's my definition of a best friend.
Not to bury your body, though.
Well, I said no questions asked. So it is a delight to be with you, because if there was ever a town that we could claim it takes a village to raise an entrepreneur, this is one of those towns. There are many of them across the country, but this is a pretty darn special place. So it is a delight and a joy for me to be back here among you, given I'm all over the country talking to people I don't know, to be here with all of you, people I've known, so many of you for so long and gotten to know you so well. This is a different version of author joy for me, so thanks for having me. I'm going to attempt something risky here in a second. I'm going to play a short video, and I'm going to try and feed the sound in here. It may or may not work. But interestingly enough, if you pay attention to one part of the video, if it actually works, you're going to see Vic Strucker's book in the video, which is kind of cool because this is the trailer we use for the book when we talk about it all over the country. So let's see if this works. Most organizations don't really spend much time thinking about their culture. Most organizations operate in chaos. Everyone wants to work on something that's bigger than themselves. I started out in an industry that I was very excited about. Very quickly I hit a trough of disillusionment. And by 1997, when I was promoted to Vice President of Product Development, I wanted out. I wanted to get as far away from this industry as I could. And in that moment, I decided to change the industry. And that's the story that I've captured in this book. People are coming from all over the planet to come visit this space that's in the basement of the parking structure in downtown Ann Arbor, Michigan. And they're coming for a reason. They're coming to see something. What most people are looking for is some lessons about what it takes to build an intentionally joyful culture. I guess you can have the light team and or any other activity, which happens while working on a project. We had so many requests for these tours, we realized it was time to share the story with the world in a different way. And that's how the book came out. The space is flexible. We work with the computer, we assign these pairs, we switch them every 5 working days. The human energy result in this kind of organization, you can actually feel the joy of learning. My name is Rich Sheridan, and I'm the author of Joy Making. So you read books, you get together with people, you take classes from amazing professors like Wayne Baker and the folks at the Center for Positive Organizations, and you want to design your culture. You want to build your business the way you want it. You want to build a place you want to work in. And imagine you were able to do that, and you could get done. When you got done, you could describe the resulting organization in just one word. What would it be? I chose joy, but I want to hear other words. Not a rhetorical question. Kind. Compassionate. Abundance. Satisfying. Rewarding. Balanced. Passionate. Wow. I like it. Yeah. So why did I choose joy? I can tell you that for me, this goes to the heart of why I got into this industry in the first place. I fell in love with computing when I was just a little kid. It was 1971, and I took a class in high school on how to program. It's amazing that they don't actually teach you how to program anymore in high school. It's stunning to me that I was able to do this in 1971, and I knew from the minute I laid hands on a computer keyboard what I was going to do the rest of my life. And my kids still to this day, they're like, seriously, Dad, you decided at 13 years old what you were going to do the rest of your life. I'm like, I'm 56 now. I've been in this business for 43 years. I think I'm pretty certain of what I'm going to be doing. And I had a lot of great opportunity when I was a kid. I actually started writing software professionally for pay, I guess, before I could drive. And I delayed my entry into the University of Michigan to keep working as a programmer. Finally came up here to school, got a couple of degrees in computer science and computer engineering, and launched a career here in Ann Arbor. It's a great town to be in the software business. This is a wonderful town to be an entrepreneur. And there's a lot of great entrepreneurial stories that have played out over the decades here in Ann Arbor. And I was part of that. I was part of that mix. But I can tell you that very quickly, my life changed. There was no longer joy. There was frustration. There was fear. There was time away from family. Long nights. You have to remember, my industry is the industry that coined the term death march inside of a business context. We were destroying people's lives. We still are. This is a common occurrence. Often resulting in just utter chaos. There's no question we end up in chaos most of the time. My industry is an industry of firefighting. My industry is an industry that you come in every day in rubber coats and plastic visors and oxygen tanks on our back, while at the same time flicking lit cigarette butts and carrying sloshing gas cans. And we wonder why there are fires everywhere. And if you live too long in chaos, if you've been inside of maybe larger organizations, typically there is a day where you move from the chaos of never getting anything done and you pull this big lever into bureaucracy, which is the land of never getting anything started, right? And yet organizations still have to get things done, so the lever starts moving back to chaos. And I can tell you there's a different path, and it's a path of simple, repeatable, measurable structure that feeds human energy. Because you see, the saddest story of all in our industry is you work those long days and those long nights, and then one day the project gets buried out in the backyard, never sees the light of day. And I can tell you the real joy for anybody in any engineering profession in particular, probably any profession, is to see the work of your hands and your minds out in the world being widely adopted and delightfully used. What really drives the engineering mindset is not the technical work, even though that's enjoyable. There is a particular joy in doing technical work. It's hard. You feel accomplished. You feel smart because you can do it. Maybe you can do some things nobody else can do. But what you really want someday is for someone to look you in the eye and stop you on the sidewalk and say, "Really? You did that? I love that. I use it every day. That's awesome. Thank you. You made my life better." That's what we look for. Unfortunately, my industry gets denied that most of the time. Most software projects fail. And I didn't want that anymore. I wanted to get away from that life, and I was contemplating getting out entirely. Those of you who know my wife Carol will know that you will understand why she laughs at me to this day when I told her. During that time I was contemplating moving the family to the boundary waters of Minnesota so we could start a canoe camp together. She's like, "Really? You thought we'd come?" I'm like, "Well, okay, all right." But that's how far away from civilization I wanted to get. That's how much I hated what I was doing. And I talk about the fact that when I was driving out to Interface Systems during those days out on the west side of town where Comcast is now, out by Jackson and Zeeb, I would take the longest possible drives out into the country. I knew all the little country churches and all the country roads, and I know which roads flood in the spring. I know all that back country because I didn't want to be at work. I look back now, and those of you who know me, I'm like, who was that guy? And in 1999, I had what Franz Johansson in his book calls a click moment. I had this moment because, you see, there's a part of me that is eternal optimist. Those of you who know me well will know that that's true. If you stick me in a room full of manure, I will keep digging looking for the pony. I know it's in there somewhere. And so I was reading a lot of books, and quite frankly, the books I was reading were coming off of Kathy's shelf. Because Kathy and I are connected. My wife Carol worked for Kathy, and I would come in and visit, and she had all these wonderful business books on her shelf, and I started reading a lot of those books, and they affected me. Books have changed my life. Authors became my teachers. And in 1999, I read a book by Kent Beck called Extreme Programming Explained, which talked about a different way of doing things, and I saw a video on an industrial design firm out in California called IDEO. And in that moment, everything coalesced. I knew what I was going to do. And I changed everything about the company that I was working for at the time. I was a VP of R&D at the time and completely transformed the entire organization. And I got 2 years to run that experiment before it was all taken away from me when the internet bubble burst. It was a story that would eventually put me on the cover of Forbes. So the question I pose to you, and the one I'm going to explore today, and the one I talk about in the book is, can you actually see joy? Can you feel it? Is it tangible? Is there evidence of it, or is it just an ethereal concept? So I want to walk you through some elements of Menlo. And people literally come from all over the planet now to see us. We did 340 tours for almost 2,500 people last year alone. I think we're at about 100 tours for 1,000 people already this year, somewhere close to that. They're coming from all over. Every continent other than Antarctica is represented. We count them. This is our little count from last year. What do you see when you come to Menlo? You see that we've broken down the barriers to human communication. This is one of those vilified open office environments you read about. Fast Company magazine declared that this doesn't work. They have psychologists who have the data that says this doesn't work. They said this is an idea that was born in the mind of Satan in the deepest caverns of hell. And let me tell you, when those articles come out, you know what happens? Everybody sends them to me. And you're like, Rich, see, Menlo doesn't work. You know, as if like one day I'm going to walk in, it's all going to be like broken down because, you know, somebody proved it didn't work. And they write me and they say, Rich, why? Why does it work for Menlo and it doesn't work for anybody else? And I had to respond. And I realized what it was. You see, we didn't build an open and collaborative workplace. We built an open and collaborative company, and then we fit our work environment to our culture. And I think that's where a lot of cultural change initiatives go wrong. You do it in name only. You change the physical space, but you don't change the people. We built the people first, and then we fit the workplace to the people. It's a noisy environment. Most people believe that software development, for example, engineering work, hard technical work must be done in library quiet. I've got 45 years in this industry, and I can assure you, I will never switch from this. We embrace noise. One of the things we don't allow at Menlo is earbuds in people's ears. You have to overhear the noise. It actually goes back to our namesake, the Menlo Park, New Jersey lab of Thomas Edison. Edison was counting on the serendipity of people overhearing the ideas of others to get to great ideas, great inventions, to get to creativity and energy and imagination. I can tell you that I'm now being carried across the country by this book and speaking all over the country. I was at Intel yesterday. And they want joy. I can tell you that one of the author joy moments for me was when this guy at Intel pulls me aside and he says, Rich, you've created a crisis in my life. And I looked at him kind of concerned. He goes, no, it's a good thing. He says, you finally reminded me of why I got into this business in the first place. Thank you. And often when the leaders bring me into their corporations, they walk me through their sea of darkened cubicles. And they walk me through and they say, Rich, this is where our technical team works. They're thinking really deep thoughts right now. And we walk by it and we see earbuds in everybody's ears and they're silently clicking away on keyboards. And then we get to the corner office and she closes the door and says, now we want to talk about our communication challenges. Like, really? Shocking. A lot of people have teams, but teams typically in business organizations are org charts. They're hierarchical plans. I prefer the teams we see on the weekends where they sit shoulder to shoulder on the same playing field together. You see, we're very counterculture at Menlo. We're an in-person company. We don't do offshoring. We don't do work from home options. There's no telecommuting. There's no VPNs where you can dial in from home. If you're going to work on a project at Menlo, you actually have to be in the room. We've bucked every trend that our industry has overtaken and foisted on the world. The space itself is set up to be flexible. These pull-downs from the ceiling, the lightweight aluminum tables, scream to the team, change me. The team's in charge of the space. The team has set up the space. If you see the tables pushed right together, it's not because there's a rule about that. It's the way the team wants to work because they form the space however they choose. And they change it regularly. There is no space police at Menlo. There are no facilities people. There's no permission to ask. And I sit right out in the room with everybody else, and quite frankly, my table is where it is because that's where the team put it. Like, Rich, you need to be here. We need to keep an eye on you. There's a lot of visual aspects to the room, and we'll talk about what some of those are. A lot of people, when they see it, compare us to Toyota, and they're like, oh, you learned this from Toyota. I'm like, no, we've never been to Toyota. And they're like, no, this is the Toyota way. I'm like, okay, awesome. One of the fun things about being in Ann Arbor is meeting people like this guy here. That's me giving a tour to Jim Badgian. Anybody know who Jim Badgian is? You should know who Jim Badgian is. He's the shuttle astronaut that has more hours in the shuttle than anybody else in the program. And he's a doctor now, or he's a doctor, and he works at the U of M Medical School. One of the books that greatly impacted me in my earliest days, and I'm sure I got it off of Kathy's shelf, was Peter Senge's book, The Fifth Discipline, on the art and practice of building a learning organization. And authors are my teachers, so I probably carried Kathy's book model forward into Menlo, because there were two things about Kathy's bookshelf. One is it had amazing books on it and had lots of them. And it was also the fact that Kathy had an abundance mentality with her books. So you just walked in and you said, hey, I'd like to borrow this, and she wouldn't even flinch. She'd be throwing it at you. Then she'd bring you another one and another one and another one. And so that's kind of the same thing we do. But at Menlo, we wanted to embrace learning not just through books, not just through the ubiquity of having all these books on shelves around the office, but we wanted to build it into the operating system of the company. We wanted to build it so that there was learning going on every minute of every day. And that speaks more to how we organize the team. You see, we work two to a computer. We put these two heads together. They work all day long on the same task at the same time, sharing a keyboard back and forth. We connect them to each other. And we get the work of their hands and their hearts together at a single computer. These pairs are assigned, and we switch them every 5 working days. I'm sure you'll have questions about that. And then ultimately, the operating system at Menlo is one about removing meetings as a stanchion of our culture. We hate meetings, so we've pretty much eliminated them. Meetings are mind-numbing, spirit-sucking, energy-draining devices of management. I'll tell you later what I really think. And here's how I know. If you find yourself in a meeting it may be today, you're in a conference room, look around, start a stopwatch, see how long it takes before people start doing this in the meeting. Right? You know, you ever see that when somebody's looking at you, hey, Rich, you had something to say on this. Oh, really? I'm sorry. Oh, I was checking my, what were you saying? Where were we at? Right? People don't want to be there. So we replaced them with conversations, with rituals, and supported them with artifacts. And again, one of the books I read, again, probably off of Kathy's shelf, was Megatrends by John Naisbitt. I love this quote. He wrote this back in 1982. And this guy was so prescient, right? Because I think this is so much more true today than it's ever been. The most important breakthroughs of the 21st century, the one we're in now, will not occur because of technology, which is what we've all come to believe, but because of an expanding concept of what it means to be human. And I think we are all wrestling with that right now, today, in our work lives, in our home lives, in our society, in our community, in our schools. This is really important. So when we work at Menlo, we work in this wide open room, and when we communicate internally with each other, we don't use technology, we don't use electronics. We use what we like to call high-speed voice technology. It's awesome. The hardware's built right in. Vocal cords, tympanic membranes, body language, and eyebrows. If we want to call a meeting at Menlo, we just say, hey, Jonathan.
Hey, Rich.
Yeah, Jonathan and I are in a meeting together. We didn't even have to move. Nobody else was bothered by this. We're just talking across the room. If we want to call an all-company meeting at Menlo, I'll practice it with you. I'm going to say, hey, Menlo. You're going to say, hey, Rich, okay? Hey Menlo. Hey Rich. Boom. The place goes from restaurant noisy to library quiet in an instant, and now we're in an all-company meeting, and nobody moved. No CC all emails, no book the calendar in the conference rooms, no checking schedules. Hey Menlo, hey Rich, boom, we're in the meeting. We transact the business of the meeting, say thank you at the end, everybody's back to work. Our typical all-company meeting lasts somewhere between 7 and 20 seconds, and they're all back to work. Can you imagine how much the productivity and energy this adds to a day by eliminating those kind of meetings? We do have one meeting a day. It's called by a dartboard. We're sort of whimsically irreverent about standard corporate culture. So the dartboard has an alarm clock in it. Why a dartboard needs an alarm clock? I don't know. But we program the dartboard to go off at 10 o'clock every morning. And at 10 o'clock every morning, bong, 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 bong. And everybody in the room stands up like Stepford children, gathers in a circle. And I do mean everybody. And we report out our status. We report out what we're working on. And what has become the iconic symbol of Menlo, the plastic Viking helmet, has a very practical purpose for us. Because we work in pairs, we report out in pairs. It was very convenient to control the meeting with the two-handle token. And one day when we found the plastic Viking helmet, we said, oh, this would be a really convenient token. And now everybody's emblazoned this on pretty much everything. When this plastic Viking helmet made the centerfold of Inc. magazine in 2011, I knew we were stuck with plastic Viking helmets for the rest of our days. This is Tracy and Joe reporting out what they're working on. This is Nate and Katie talking about things they're challenged with and where they might need help. This is Carol and Thomas talking about a recent thing they just completed. The token moves around the circle, 50 or 60 people, and then the meeting ends and the token is set down on the table and we do the Hill Street Blues thing. Be careful out there. And we go back to work. The meeting takes 13 minutes or less every single day. I defy most organizations to begin a meeting of 60 people in 13 minutes, let alone call it, assemble it, start it, hold it, give everyone a chance to talk, get back to work 13 minutes. There's a lot of reasons that goes fast. It's not because we talk fast. There are a number of tribal issues in software development. There are 3 basic tribes in any technology project. They're the tribes of the people who are going to do the technical work. It's the kind of team we are. We're that technical tribe. They're the tribes of people who pay to have technical work done. They're the people who sponsor projects, either internally in a company or externally if they're a client like they are of ours. And then there are the people, the tribe that actually uses the software, the users. We'll talk about that part of our joy because that actually goes to the heart in just a couple of slides of why we do it. But one of the biggest challenges is the tribes all speak different languages, don't they? If you've ever tried to talk, you ever tried to talk to a technical tribe? Yeah, it's like talking to your doctor, right? It's a bunch of acronyms, it's a bunch of lingo, it's a secret language we have. And most people don't understand it, so they kind of glaze over. Well, we need to understand how to communicate across these tribal boundaries. That's where the greatest opportunity exists in our culture. And so in our world, we do a show and tell. We reconnect with our client every 5 working days. And interestingly, in our world, we reverse the role of show and tell. We put the client at center stage at the keyboard and the mouse while the software that we're working on the previous 5 days is presented up on the screen, and our client shows us the work we did the previous 5 days. We don't show it to them. And that pulls them back into the conversation. And instead of having the typical corporate managerial interpretive dance where a project manager goes to the meeting and then tells the team what they learned, the whole team sits on the show and tell, and they answer questions about the work that the client might have, so everybody gets a chance to talk about the piece they worked on. And it energizes the team because they get to see their work being appreciated by the people who are paying us to do the work. We're kind of silly. Obviously, a company that talks about joy, well, you think I take things a little bit differently. So when we plan projects at Menlo, we don't use electronics either. We don't use Microsoft Project. We don't use Jira. We don't use Basecamp. We use little folded pieces of paper The paper is folded to the exact size of the particular tasks, and the client engages with us in an active conversation and moves these pieces of paper from a table to a planning sheet to decide what their highest priorities are. And the system is so unambiguous because when the piece of paper moves from the table and moves to the planning sheet, it's now in the plan, and if it stays on the table, it's no longer in the plan. I defy most project management systems to be that unambiguous about deciding what's in and what's out. Think about your next meeting. Again, think about at the end. Ask the question of somebody who was at the meeting, what did we decide not to do? And you'll be amazed at how few people will even understand the question, let alone how to answer the question. In our world, if the piece of paper is still on the table, that's something they've decided not to do. Our clients get invested in these little pieces of paper. This is our client looking at the particular topics. It's an engaging discussion that involves collaboration with our team as we're moving through each one of these folded pieces of paper. And supported by probably the most critical ambiguity killer in our system, a handwritten 5.5 inch by 8.5 inch index card drives our system. And just reflect on that for a second. A handwritten 5.5 inch by 8.5 inch card drives our system. This is critical to the success of our system. You see, the reason we want it handwritten is because it connects to a different part of your brain. Cutting and pasting doesn't do that. The reason we like a small index card is, well, it feeds right into that old adage, I was going to write you a short letter, but I didn't have time, so I wrote you a long one. You have to be concise. You have to get to the point. You don't want to overwhelm people or they won't actually read the details. Once the plan is set, we put them up on a wall for everyone to see. This is where people start comparing us to Toyota, because apparently the Toyota production system looks a little bit like this, which is fascinating to me. Toyota got so annoyed with hearing that we were like them, but we had never come to visit. They actually sent the 2 CIOs from Toyota North America to come visit. And then they said, Rich, we're tired of you saying you've never been to Toyota, so they brought me to Toyota. And I see why now that they compared us to them, and they've actually brought Japanese executives now from Toyota Japan to come visit as well. And Bruce Brownlee and Chuck Goulash are good friends of mine as well. I don't know if I could call them at 3 in the morning, but maybe Bruce. I was teaching a good friend of mine from Domino's Pizza. They have a big IT team at Domino's, and they wanted to learn our system. And Bill was my good friend that worked at Domino's, and he came here and he looked at this, and he said, yeah, Rich, we're going to implement this, but he says, you guys are like the Amish of software development, you know? He says, we're going to put this in Jira, which is one of these electronic tools for managing things like this. And I said, oh, okay, tell me how that goes. He wrote me an email somewhat sheepishly about 3 months later. He says, well, Rich, we just switched to the Amish version. He says, nobody ever looked at Jira. See, this is what happens often with technology, is you never peek inside of it, right? It's like the 3-ring binder you put on the shelves. Nobody ever reads it. We put it out in the open where everybody can see it every day. And then Bill at the end of the email said, productivity doubled the next week, Rich. It was so annoying. We update the status of each of these cards with a little colored sticky dot. Yellow says that's what we're working on now. Orange says we think we're done. In programmer land, anybody ever work with programmers? Anybody ever was a programmer? Yeah, okay. This is where I spent the first 20 years of my professional career, was actually coding. I love it. It was a fun activity. I don't get to do it anymore. But I can tell you, programmers have as many different definitions for done as Eskimos have words for snow. You maybe have heard some of them. You'll hear programmers say things like, well, it's done, but it's not done. Well, it's done, but it's not finished. Well, it worked on my machine. Anybody ever hear that one? It worked on my machine. So I have the antidote for that one. If you ever have a programmer say it worked on my machine, you look at them in the eye and you say, great, we're shipping your machine tomorrow. And they're like, no, it's my machine. You know, and then they'll help you figure out how to get it to work on at least one more computer. Orange says they think they're done, then QA comes and checks their work. If QA likes what you see, you get a green dot, and they sign it. That's the endorphin rush for the programmers, because now it's really done. If QA doesn't like what they see, you get a red dot. That's endorphin rush for the QA team. They love to break things. Now I want to speak to the heart of joy. When people come to visit Menlo, I talk about joy. I talk about joy right off the bat. I sort of do the Simon Sinek thing of starting with why we exist, what do we believe, what's our shared belief system around what we're doing, and we talk about the business value of joy. And people look at me funny. They're like, Rich, why are you talking about joy? We're here to hear about your crazy software design and development techniques, and you're talking about joy. I'm like, yeah. I point back to the room full of people. I say, pretend half of those people have joy and the other half don't. Which one do you want working on your project? And they're like, well, we want the joyful half. I'm like, why? What difference would it make? Why would you care? And then what they tell me says everything. Well, you'd be more engaged, you'd be more productive, you'd produce higher quality, you'd care more about the outcome, you get more work done the same amount of time, you'd be more efficient. Like, okay, so you're with me. There is in fact tangible business value to joy. But I tell them, I say, look, this isn't about joy in the room, although I don't believe you can have a joyful outcome without joyful souls in the room. It's about the mission. It's about the focus external to the organization. You see, what we want more than anything else is to get our work out into the world, end up being widely adopted, and delight the people for whom it's intended. And in order to do that, we have to learn to speak to that third tribe I talked about, the tribe of people who actually use software. All of you have been tortured by software somewhere in your lives. You know it. Heck, we call you stupid users. I mean, what industry can get away with that, right? And then we get you to self-deprecate. Well, I'm just a stupid user. I haven't spent years figuring out how your wonderfully designed software works. And then we have to write dummies books for you stupid users, right? I mean, seriously, what industry can get away with this like for decades, right? I mean, we are the industry that gave you, if you want to shut down your computer, please press the start button. So we had to add something different. We had to break through this barrier, and we added a team of people we call high-tech anthropologists. It's a great title. Jonathan was one of those for us for a number of years. The high-tech anthropologist is, as the name implies, applying the principles of anthropology in the world of building and designing high-tech products. And what they have to do is go out and study people, and they have to study them in their native environment. I can't say this strong enough. Get out of the building. And you can't ask people what they want the software to do. They don't know, and it's not because they're stupid. It's exactly the opposite. It is because they are experts at what they do. They're unconsciously competent, and so we have to use the techniques of the anthropologist to discover their vocabulary, their workflow, their habits, how they think, what their goals are as human beings. It's painstaking work. It's joyful work. It's exacting. And it's ambiguous for a lot of it. And there's a lot of sense making that has to go on. We use a lot of paper-based artifacts here, like this persona map to define who exactly it is we're trying to serve. 3M loves us to death. This is them taking what they've learned and starting to assimilate it until they can get it down to the pixel-perfect screen designs, which is really what we do as a business, is create these awesome designs that then our software team knows how to turn into incredibly solid working software. Because you see, Deming said it best way back in his day, all anyone asks for is a chance to work with pride. We give our team that ability. I'm going to end with a fun story out of the book. It's a story, you're going to think it's a story about dogs and babies, and it is kind of a story about dogs and babies, but I can assure you this is not a story about dogs and babies. So don't get confused. Listen for the real lesson inside of what I'm about to share with you. Because this is a lesson about trust, about experimentation, and about knocking down invisible barriers in our minds as to what will work and what won't. Because most of you will go back tomorrow and say, I wish I could have something like what I heard today or what I read about in the book. And then you're off to the races, or you'll say it won't work here, and you'll be defeated before you even get started. And this is about not being defeated. Tracy had little Maggie 7 years ago. She was off on maternity leave for 3 months. She came back into the office. She said, "I'm ready to come back to work, Rich." And I said, "Awesome, we miss you. Can't wait to have you back." And she said, "There's only one problem. Maggie's too young for daycare." She says, "Grandparents live too far away. We don't know what to do." And I can tell you at this moment for me, there were two little voices on my shoulders, you know, those little voices. And there was a screaming match in my brain that Tracy never heard. And it went something like this: "Don't you even dare think about that. HR will kill you. This is against the rules. There's got to be a law against what you're contemplating." And the other voice said, "It's your company. You don't even have an HR department. And you love kids, so tell her." And so I looked at her, I said, "Bring her into work." And she said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Bring her into the office." She said, "All day?" I said, "Sure, why not?" She said, "Every day?" I said, "Yeah." And she looked around the big open room. She said, "Rich, where will I put her?" I said, "Tracy, she's 3 months old. She's not going anywhere. Just put her in a bassinet on the floor wherever you're working." She goes, "Yeah, but what if she makes a fuss?" Do you see what Tracy was doing? She was throwing up all the barriers. I think she was excited, but I think she was also convinced I'd lost had a screw come loose in my head. And she's like, "What if she makes a fuss?" I said, "Here it's like a noisy restaurant. You'll never hear it." She goes, "Yeah, what if she really makes a fuss?" I said, "Tracy, you're the mom. I trust you. You'll do the right thing. We'll figure it out together. Let's try it. Let's run the experiment." Now, you might think that's Maggie, but it's not. That's Ellie. Ellie is Menlo baby number 8 in the last 7 years. It's an awesome experiment. This is Ellie on the dad's front pack while pair programming. This is Ellie with mom. Katie was one of our high-tech anthropologists for a time, and she would bring Maggie to the high-tech anthropology sessions. Maggie loved it, or Ellie loved it. This is Solomon, or this is Henry. Thank you. Solomon was another one of the babies. This is Henry coming back for a visit. Henry's a little older. He doesn't come into the office every day now. This is actually Tracy with Fern. And I can tell you there was some amazing discoveries along the way, things we didn't anticipate, because this is what happens when you run an experiment. You think it's going to go one way, yet it goes another. There were times that Maggie fussed, like a baby will. But it wasn't mom that rescued Maggie, it was the team. They were like, "No, it's my turn to hold." And then something really delightful happened. A discovery we had not anticipated, could not have anticipated. We found out customers behave better when you bring a baby to the meeting. This is work. I can tell you I lead a lot of the tours, not all of them anymore. I used to do most of them, and it wasn't uncommon when there was a baby in the room for the mom to give me the baby during the tour. Because if you got a big guy with warm hands and a deep voice, and you put the baby in my arms and I just walk around telling the stories, guess what the baby does? This is Henry learning how to manage. Hey, are you almost done? Hey, are you coming in this weekend? You got your TPS report down? I actually think Henry was going looking for the dog, but we do allow dogs as well. Fern and Murphy would come in. Fern has since moved to New York City, but Murphy still comes in every day. This is not Murphy. This is Buster. This gentleman here, Michael, is one of our clients. Michael called up one day and he said, "Hey, do you guys mind if I bring Buster with me?" To the show and tell. This is one of our client show and tells. I'm like, "Really? Who's Buster?" It's like my Great Dane. We're like, "Sure, bring him in." Dog is huge. And he's a big baby. he actually pushes the glass doors apart in our glass wall conference room so he can stick his nose out into space. Fern will come up and just plant her nose right here next to Buster. But again, it's not about dogs and babies. What this is a picture of is becoming such an engaging culture that our clients decide to participate in the culture. And I can tell you, if you can get to that point, one of the groups that Kathy introduced me to so many years ago, and they're wonderful people and written a great series of books, are Joe Pine and Jim Gilmore, who wrote a book called The Experience Economy. And it talks about pulling your clients into your experience. And this is what Michael did. He brings his dog. I mean, who brings dogs to business meetings, right? We've had clients bring their kids in. Snow days. One of our key clients walks in, brings his daughter with him that day because she was off of school because of the snow day, and he didn't even ask. He's like, I knew it'd be okay. I'll just set her up at a table over here. Didn't even think twice about it. And in amongst all of this, underneath the stories like I tell here, there has to be rigor and discipline. You have to give your team the chance to work with pride, to produce great quality work, because if you don't do that, it's all for naught. And I can tell you, as much as there is, in fact, joy in the room, and there's happiness, and there's laughter, and there's joking, and there's babies, and there's dogs, there is a seriousness that underlies everything, because what we care most about is producing great work quality. And ultimately what we wanted to do is what Peter Senge told us so long ago. We wanted to build this learning organization that becomes your company's ultimate competitive advantage. And we were able to do that. Happy to take questions.
Roger, do you need the mic for the question? Hold on just one second, Rich.
Okay.
I want to introduce Roger Rail, who's also one of our sponsors. And Roger is videoing this. It will be online pretty much by Monday for sure. Yeah, for sure, mostly. And but all of these are videotaped, and we have an archive of them. So if you missed some, please come. And I want to thank Roger for doing this. Question? Now the mic is there. Everybody's afraid. Rich is over here. All right.
So have you ever used a baby to make a sale? They're great at trade shows, let me tell you.
Yeah, it was a fun moment. Am I okay here, Roger? Yep, everything's okay. Awesome. So I had Solomon on my knee one day, and Christina, the mom, was 20 feet away with her back to me, and I was waiting for a potential client to call. And then I saw the phone ring, and I knew it was that potential client calling in, and Solomon started to fuss a little bit, and I thought, uh-oh. And I had to grab the phone because it was going to roll over to voicemail, and I was trying to, Christina, and she couldn't hear me, so I grabbed the phone and I started talking. And if you've ever watched the interaction between babies and adults on telephones, it's kind of interesting because they know they have you trapped now when you have this thing to your ear, and they start misbehaving. And Solomon started not fussing, but just having fun and making lots of noise, and I figured I gotta fess up here. So I told the lady on the phone, I said, by the way, while we're talking, I just want to let you know you're going to hear a baby in the background. She goes, oh, you're working at home today? I said, no, I'm at the office. She goes, oh, you bring your child to work? I said, it's not mine. And she's like, tell me more. And I told her the story. She's like, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing company. I totally want to work with you. So yeah.
Rich, you deal with the scalability issue in the book a little bit, but it'd be interesting to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah, it's always interesting. People always want to ask me, will this scale? We're a team of about 50 right now. We just tripled our space moving into the Liberty Square space, so we can easily accommodate a team of at least 100 in this space. I've seen this. We teach this methodology to others. Nationwide Financial, for example, sent about 500 of their people. Nationwide Financial down in Columbus, south until you smell it and west until you step in it. Sorry, I could only get away with that in Ann Arbor. Hopefully no Ohio State fans in the room. Well, I don't really care. But so Nationwide has a small IT team down in Columbus. It's only 7,500 people. Can you imagine that? They started taking our methodology, and they've transformed at least a couple thousand of their team to work like this. And it's obviously you have to make adjustments at that level of scale, but it's interesting to watch an old-fashioned insurance company tear down every wall in this space. I can tell you they can afford better furniture than Menlo can, so they got insurance company money, but a lot of the practices are still the same. But what I talk about in the book isn't just the ability to scale up, because that's what everybody thinks. When you talk about scaling, you talk about scaling up, right? Most organizations never think about what does it mean to scale down. And this is where software teams really struggle. If you've got a little software team of 6, each one of them becomes a tower of knowledge, right? It's a database expert, the middleware expert, the front end, the JavaScript expert, and all this sort of thing. And of course, if you need to scale that team down, who do you get rid of, right? Because every one of them is essential to the success of the team. Because we pair our team and switch them every week, we can scale up and scale down with alacrity. It just doesn't matter to us because there's nobody on our team who's a tower of knowledge. There's no programmer on our team. For example, if you know anything about programmers, they typically identify themselves by a narrow slice of technology. You know, try it sometime. If you don't know any programmers, just say, oh, what do you do? And they'll say, I'm a Java developer, I'm a middleware developer, I'm a front-end developer, I'm a PHP developer, I'm a Ruby on Rails developer. Our team laughs when they hear that. They're like, seriously, you identify yourself by a piece of technology? And they're like, well, yeah, where do your allegiances lie? And I'm like, good. You know, their team's like, I like to write software. And so, because we're moving the knowledge around every week and nobody owns a piece of the system, it's not possible in a paired environment switching the pairs every week. It means if we need to double the size of a team in order to get more done, we can do that, which there's actually a book in our industry called The Mythical Man Month that says what I just described is impossible, and I agree it is impossible in the quaint way that our industry's been organized for all the decades I've been in it. But it just doesn't affect us at Menlo. And the effect of this actually goes to a whole different part of it, and that's sustainability. You see, we only work 40-hour work weeks at Menlo. We never work weekends. It's a normal work day. We never had to deny or delay a vacation request in the 13 years we've been in business. All of our clients are external to our organization. Understand, as much as they care about our culture, they don't care about it so much that they'd be willing to forego their deadlines. But you see, we built a system that can adapt to the changing requirements of the client. If the client says, hey, you've got 4 people on my project right now, but I need you to get twice as much done. We're like, great, we take the 4 that are working on the project, we split them across 4 computers, we bring 4 more people in, plant them in, and the next week we're getting twice as much done. We're practicing getting ready for that every minute of every day so that we can scale up. And then when the client says, hey, we got to cut the budget back, we can shrink the team down to 2 people and still get progress done because no one has any particular piece of this trapped. And ultimately, what it's about for us is the human sustainability of producing great software. Because you see, one of the biggest challenges in software is the computer does exactly what you tell it to do. Not what you want, not what you need, not what you hope, exactly what you tell it to do. A tired programmer puts in lots of bugs. You know, maybe you guys don't realize how joyless a profession software design and development is, okay? It is very joyless in most organizations. This is a high burnout industry. Now, it used to be I'd have to explain because people didn't believe me. Now that healthcare.gov has actually happened, I don't have to explain this to anybody, okay? When the President of the United States has to get up in front of the nation and talk about butts and glitches, I find it offensive. This was an important initiative in our country, and we blew it, big time. And then when the President of the United States gets up in front of the nation and says, don't worry, we have people working 24/7. That's when I started worrying, because I can assure you, when a typical organized software project moves to 24/7, it's not 3 shifts. It's the same people. And at that point, you're screwed, and you're putting in bugs that will take you a decade to get rid of from there. And it doesn't have to be that way. We're a living, breathing example. Here's an amazing statistic at Menlo. The last time my team remembers a software emergency, if you know what that means, 2004. Most people come in, they're like, how do you know this works, Rich? And I grab my phone, we're 2 hours into a tour, I grab my phone and I dial our switchboard, and they hear the phone ring. There's only one phone number in the place. There's no hotline, there's no support desk, there's no hot fix team. And they hear the phone ring, and I'm like, how often have you heard that since you've been here? And they're like, that's the first time. I'm like, exactly, our phone doesn't ring with problems. And suddenly it dawns on them, we're like, we have a whole team dedicated to this. 30% of our resources are dedicated to fixing bugs. Remember lit matches and sloshing gas cans, right? They were like, we get 300 calls a day because of problems in our software. Like, we don't. Can you imagine how demoralizing it is to be reminded 300 times a day that you produced crappy work product in the past? I mean, I can tell you my old managerial life, the people above me said, don't worry, Rich, we'll give your team time to fix the problems later. They never did. It was a lie. And then it was just firefighting from that day forward.
So there's lots of great learnings from things that go right. Tell me about something that went wrong in a learning that you had from that.
Yeah, our biggest our biggest tagline at Menlo, probably one of the core principles of our system, is make mistakes faster. So this is not a system of not making mistakes, it's a system of making them quickly so we can correct them while they're still small. So I would declare we have almost, I think there's a few problems we've been able to push off the boat that we don't have that others do, but I think we have almost the same number of problems that anybody has. What we don't have are the same size problems everybody else has, because we find them sooner and correct them while they're still small. This is not about perfection, and this isn't about happiness every minute of every day, I can assure you. Joy and happiness are two very different things, right? Anybody who's ever raised daughters knows there's a lot of joy in raising those little girls, but it's not happiness every minute, right? And so, yeah, I mean, I could go on. I actually have a whole chapter in the book dedicated to problems that we have, although I appreciate actually the epitaph on that particular chapter is Ari's rule number 8 that says success just means you get better problems. So, yeah. Okay.
Rich, given the unique nature of your organization, how do you recruit? How do you know about fit, assessing that, and so on?
Yep. Yeah, so if you think we're weird on all this other stuff, wait till you hear how we interview and hire. We actually just did it Wednesday. And Wednesday we had an extreme interview. And we give it a weird name because it's different. We have an interview where we don't ask any questions. Imagine that. Like, well, how would it be an interview then? Well, what we do is we assess cultural fit, as Ken described. I can tell you this is where most companies go wrong, especially in my industry. My industry hires off of resumes. My industry hires off of buzzword mania. We're looking for an Oracle 9.1.1.3 Service Pack 2 expert. And if you come in and say, well, I know Service Pack 1, they're like, oh, you got to hit the ground running here. Like, seriously? You know, and so, you know, you become your resume, you become your buzzword bingo, you become a monster.com search criteria. But at Menlo, we don't care about that. Not at least at first. Because you see, what we need more than anything are good kindergartners to fill this room. And you can't interview for kindergarten skills. You know, I could say, so Ken, do you like people? Mm-hmm. You a people person? Yeah, right? You know, if you were a day of the week, Ken, what day would you be? Right? I mean, you ever get these stupid questions, right? I mean, you know, as hiring managers, you learned a few of these. Oh, you know, ask them the day of the week. I had one guy who says, Saturday morning. I'm like, really? Saturday morning? Why Saturday morning? And all of a sudden you realize, oh crap, you know, that was the answer, right? And he says, because I want to look back over the whole week and think about everything I got done. So we bring people in mass. This would be a pretty comfortable sized group for us for a mass interview. We had 30 people in on Wednesday night. They come in about 4 o'clock and we pair them during the interview. One candidate with another. Why? Because we want to simulate the work environment. We put 2 people together to work on a task, a paper-based task with pen and paper, but one pencil and one piece of paper, because they have to share. And what we tell them when we give them the success criteria, this is not a secret game. This isn't like guess how many golf balls it would take to fill this room, or stupid questions like that Google used to use but doesn't anymore because they know it doesn't work. Simple, practical exercises. But what we really want to see, and we tell them this, is do you play well with others? Do you share? Do you support each other? Because what we're looking at is improv theater. If you know the rules of improv, when you step onto the stage, your attitude should be, I am the least important person here. My job is to support all of you. And that's what we're looking for in an interview process. We do this exercise for 20 minutes and we switch the pairs. Why? Because this is the way we work. We switch the pairs every 5 days. We want to see if you can work with different kinds of people. We do it 3 times, then we send you all home. That was the first interview. Again, no questions asked. You can ask us questions. We're trying to immerse you in our culture. We're teaching our culture from the moment you walk in the door. And then afterwards, I think the most magical part of Menlo culture occurs. It's the conversation the observers had who were watching each of these pairs, because there'll be one Menlonian assigned to watch the 2 people who are paired together for the 20 minutes. So every person will have 3 observers, because there'll be a different observer for each pair. And then afterwards, we get together and we talk about what we saw. And I can tell you, I think this is the moment where we are most steeped in the Menlo culture, because what are we really talking about in this conversation about the people we saw? We're talking about ourselves, we're talking about what we believe, we're talking about the culture we're trying to support, and we're self-effacing because we realize that we are not perfect at what we do and we're part of the Menlo team. And so it gives us a chance to explore with each other what's most important to us as a team. And if that works out, we invite the people who we saw that had good skills at kindergarten, and we bring them in for a day interview, and they actually do real work for a day, and we pay them. And they come in for 8 hours, and they pair in the morning with one person, they pair in the afternoon with another, because we want to give them a chance to see what it feels like to work here. And if that works out, we bring them in for a 3-week trial period, 3-week contract, to see if it works out. And that's the system we use to get people in. And I can assure you that most organizations do not think about interviewing like this. They don't think about hiring like this. And probably the worst aspect of any job is the onboarding process, right? I used to say, as an old hiring manager, my job was to try and get a new person productive before I demoralized them. Have you ever experienced that? You go into a new job and you're sitting in the lobby and the boss comes out and says, oh, hey, Ken, I'm so glad you're here. We're so glad to have you. Hey, I don't know what happened in HR, but we don't have a computer, we don't have a cube, we don't have a desk, a chair. But Ken, we are so glad you're here. Hey, listen, I'm going on a trip. I'll be going back in a couple of weeks. Remember those projects we talked about in the interview? That, we canceled those. So, hey, Ken, I just wrote a book. Why don't you spend a couple of weeks reading it? My poor daughter, Megan, took a job in Charlotte for one of the big consulting firms down there. And literally the first 4 weeks of her life there, they stuck her in a cubicle with nothing to do, nothing. And one day, about Thursday afternoon, about 3:30, she starts packing up her stuff, because they've given her all the stupid personnel forms, and she'd read them 18 times by this point, and she starts packing up her day, and her boss shows right up and says, "What are you doing?" She says, "Well, I got nothing to do. I'm going to go home early today." She says, "No, you're not. We're a culture that you sit here until quitting hour." She called me up crying. She says, "What should I do?" I said, "Quit. Get out as quick as you can." She goes, "But I don't have another job." I said, "No, they're destroying your soul. Get out." And she did. And now she's found a great job and she loves it. But I can tell you that this is what onboarding feels like in most organizations.
Rich, I have a quick question for you. That is, you've got some partners with this, and when you started this, that's the part that made me a little nervous, because I know a lot of businesses fail because of the partnership network. Could you say how you've worked with your partners?
Sure.
And how that's succeeded?
Yeah. I mean, one thing is my direct partner in all of this is James Goebel. I could not have done this without James. James should be here with me, but we split our duties and go out in different areas. If you think Ari and Paul's a great team, I sort of look at Ari and Paul and James and I similarly in terms of how we're connected to one another. We have had 2 other partners at the beginning, Tom Malash and Bob Sims. Tom got distracted a couple of years in, and we bought him out. He's still a good friend, and so we see him often. And Bob Sims is our CFO, and he's in the back office. So yeah, it's a partner of equals too. We're all equal owners in the business.
Just curious about how much you involve your team in working on the business too. Yeah, I know you have your open book methodology, but are there kind of company goals and priorities that the whole company puts time into as well?
Yeah, so we practice open book finance now. We've got all our financials on the wall for the world to see. We show them on tours. We just don't care. A lot of it's amazing. People come in like, aren't you afraid your competitors will see all this data? And we're like, what would they do with it? And they're like, yeah, okay. It's like, what? I don't know why people get all nervous about financials, but I think we'd rather show ourselves, we'd rather take our clothes off than show our bank statements to people. But so yes, the team participates in all the open book finance stuff, and I can tell you part of the delight for me, and it was actually a learning moment, stepping away from the business for the most part of a year to write the book. Man, I was out of the business for most of a year, and you get a little nervous when that happens because you wonder, did I do the right things as a leader to prepare the team to be there without me? And quite frankly, I think you still need me. Is that the truth? I don't know. There's a reason my title says tour guide and storyteller, because that's what most of my days are filled with. And and I think, like every organization, I think we still have to be thinking about the big goals and where we go next and all that sort of thing. And we're actively involved in that conversation right now because, quite frankly, the book is changing our lives dramatically right now.
How's the book changing your life?
Well, I'm on airplanes a lot. I get to go present to the iconic corporations of America now. When Walt Disney World called up and said, Rich, we need you to come down to Orlando and bring joy to the Magic Kingdom. I knew my life was changing when Richard Branson called up and said, Rich, come to New York. We're gathering 12 of us together to talk about people-centric cultures. You say yes to those. You just come, and then Ariana Huffington's there, and Blake McCoskey from Tom's Shoes, and somebody from Zappos, and you realize you're now playing in a very different field. And then when PayPal called and said, we need you the next day in California, and I said, if you want me to be functional, you're going to have to fly me first class from New York to California, because otherwise I'll be useless to you. And they put me on a Virgin flight, and I can tell you, there's first class and then there's Virgin first class. It's like, somewhere in the middle of the country, when my feet couldn't even touch the seat in front of me, I said, I think life has changed just a little bit for me. I was at Intel yesterday, and Coca-Cola sent 21 of their executives from around the world to spend a day in our shop. When you start seeing those happen, you just realize something important has just happened.
Congratulations on your success. Okay, so let's do it, he's an Intel next. He's going to say, just the other day I was spending the day with 75 Ann Arbor wonderful leaders. And that's the kind of people that I'm talking to. So Rich is going to sign. Rich, why don't you maybe do it this table right here. And Anna, you've got some more books left. Just a few left. There's another box. Okay. So if we could start.
We have hundreds here for you.
Yeah. Maybe what we could do is start a line that would go this way, so that we let other people stay. We're going to ask everybody else to please hang around, talk to each other. This is Leaders Connect, so you're supposed to talk and give your pitch. I stopped Kathleen a couple times and said, please say what your name of your product is. Because people want to know what you do. There's a lot of business that's been transacted here, and a lot of businesses have started and exchanged ideas. So please stay around, and then we'll be back in 2 weeks where Vic Strecker will be here speaking on purpose. And that's the only time we can get Vic. It was tough to get Rich. And here's bringing your kids to work, Marissa. That's great. And Marissa, I remember when you were pregnant with your first one, and you were working.
To sit on the baby orange.
Well, no, but the first one even. You just had when we were working together. So again, thank you for coming. If anybody's interested in working part of an executive roundtable, mostly for entrepreneurs, please let me know. I'm signing up 12 people now for a new group, and look forward to seeing you all. Thanks for coming. Enjoy spring.
one more shout out to a local Ann Arbor business. So one element of author joy I never anticipated was the book actually got printed by Edwards Brothers Beloit just on Jackson Road. So as the author, I got to literally receive the first copy coming off the spring press. Most authors don't get that.
I wish.